I lost these fingers. Pickle jar, 87. I want a Vlasic real bad. This tiny jar, little pickle at the bottom. He's like, no! Like pulls out a mangled, bloody 2 fingers, just like. Some battles are worth fighting for.
Why don't we ever have something this funny on fucking Let's Plays?
I don't know. I don't know if I should put this at the beginning of a podcast about Mistborn.
Speaking of which, classist undertones. Are they there?
Bum bum bum, literature gets a look. Legs talk about books. Greetings and welcome to Legs Talk About Books, the monthly podcast where we talk about books. You guys could say stuff.
We're supposed to do that in unison?
Yeah, it's okay. It's fine. We'll just keep it in. The intro's not all that important. I'm your host, Hardleg Joe. Joining me today, 2 co-hosts. We've got Bootleg Drew.
Hello.
And CB Radio.
But you work so hard on the entrance.
And I know, but it's fine. Who cares about Mistborn? Not me, certainly. That's a terrible way to start a podcast.
Yes. Hey, this book we're reading, who cares about it? Let's talk about things.
Well, yeah, today we're reading Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. And as I've said the last couple episodes, we're still kind of new at this. I believe this is the 5th episode? 4th episode?
I think it's 4th.
Yeah, this is the 4th episode we're releasing. We're still trying to learn how things are doing. This time I've got the 2 co-hosts with us, as I just mentioned, and all 3 of us have actually read the book this time, so it'll be a more full-fledged discussion. And yeah, if you're new to the show, in general, we don't really, go plot by plot, point by point to talk about the books. It's more like discussing the interesting things that happens in the book. Completely spoiler-filled, although, before we get to that, we should just sort of, give our thoughts, recommendations. What did we think about this book, if you haven't read it? Brandon, you want to start us off?
I say if you want to get into a good series, it's a decent start. It sets up an at least interesting sounding world. We'll get into that later. But yeah, it's I want people to read it, but I don't want it to be like, hey, I hate this book.
Yeah, it's worth reading, but it's not like, run out and get it now.
Club your parents over the head, take their money, go get the book now.
If you need to wait a couple years, that's fine.
Yeah, slowly steal from their wallets.
How about you, Drew? What are your thoughts on this?
I like some of the characters. I like some of the detail work in the story. However, it's, again, same deal. It's not worth getting immediately, but it is, if you do read it, you will, at least have an enjoyable read.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable read. I'm kind of the same way. I think when me and Brandon, we talked about Furies of Calderon, and you were like, I just want a really good adventure story, something that's just fun and it passes the time. I didn't think Calderon fit this. To me, this is like the good action movie. It does a lot of things right. It's got, like you said, good characters, good action, keeps you entertained. It's got enough interesting ideas that it's not completely derivative. It has a cool setting and stuff like that. But it doesn't really do all that much with it. You're not gonna, come away with this, wow, I've learned something. Oh, this has challenged the way I think. It's just sort of well, that was cool. What's on TV? What other kind of books can I read? What other neat things?
Nice. Can I eat my food now?
Yeah. So, again, that's what we thought about the book. Go check it out if you're interested, if you'd like to know. From here, we're just gonna be talking about, pretty much spoiling the entire book, talking about interesting things about it. So this is your chance to back out now. Especially you, Todd. I know you haven't watched it. Not watched it, read. Fuck, I fucked it up. I'm sorry, guys.
It's a YouTube video. He could still have watched it.
Yeah.
I'm shaking my head with much disappointment.
And I guess we haven't really mentioned it, but you guys, you listened to the audiobook, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not sure, did you guys ever check, did you listen to the same version?
I believe so.
Yeah.
It's narrated by Michael Kramer.
Michael Kramer.
Yeah, mine was a dude,
Michael?
but I didn't read the name.
Yeah.
So.
Probably the same guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And was there anything, particularly good or bad about his performance or anything?
Other than, he didn't do too much inflection work, but he just kind of read it, which was fine. I wasn't looking for him to, try to just make Vin's voice sound one way. I was just as long as I could tell when he was doing different characters, I was fine.
He didn't do a high-pitched voice for the women.
Yeah, but there were certain characters he did, he you put like a certain spin on a character. I think
A little accent or something.
Yeah, on specifically Sazed. I believe we're past the
Sazed or Sazed.
He made his very breathy, very stop. He actually changed the cadence of how he spoke.
Yeah,
and that actually helped. It made him stand out as a character.
I just remember, it's a small side tangent. They made an audiobook version of like Watchmen, or like a motion comic where someone narrates over it, and that's renowned for like every time Silk Spectre talks, he does a girl voice like this, and it's the most distracting thing. Yeah. It's like really hard to take it seriously because he does that. Ugh. Either way, let me get a drink real quick.
Yeah, we've definitely got off on a side tangent here.
So just to start with, probably the first thing that immediately got my attention about 3 or 4 chapters in is just the interesting way that they do the action sequences in this book. He's got this really frenetic style, really like fast-paced, but also very detailed. I mentioned that it almost sounds like he's blocking out a movie. There's this very much like, he jumped, and then to his left there was this guy. He swung the stick, and he ducked under it. Then he moved his left shin and kicked him right there. He toppled to the ground, right in time to jump back, and it's just like every action is laid out in detail. And, I kinda hated it.
It takes you out of the scene when you're the reader, because it fills in so many blanks that this theater of the mind would naturally fill in. And so it just feels kind of wrong almost to listen to him describe it in detail and try to keep up with that mentally.
That's pretty much what I would say. I just think that if you put the smallest amount of details, you don't have to say, they fought, done. You could add a little bit of flair to it, but you don't have to painstakingly type every word of every fight.
Every word, every action of every word of every fight.
He shot at himself.
Yes. And then he dodged to the left, and I'm like, You're trying to paint the picture. The thing for me, especially reading it, is that when it gets to action scenes, I tend to, like, read faster, because I'm like, oh, the exciting stuff. I'm like, I want to go and go and go. And the thing is, like, 1 second of movement takes up a whole page.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you're rushing through it, and there's all this detail, and, like, nothing's happened. And
you wear yourself out.
It has this weird, like, time dilation effect, where it feels like the action scenes are taking forever. And the main thing I wanted to talk about you guys was, like, how did that translate in the audiobook version?
It didn't really translate any differently, but for me, I had a different kind of issue with it. It was like my brain immediately went from being like, here's a scene, to start sketching that scene, like, start, like, like, actually filling in all the points.
Instead of knowing the characters, you're suddenly, like, top-down looking into a room, trying to place where everyone is in the room.
It just turns into one of those, like, preview scenes in like, an action movie, or, like, that was a heist movie where they're like, you'll be here, and then he'll be here, and then when this happens, and, you know...
I was just gonna say, the big difference for me when listening to the audio version was that it didn't so much have a time dilation effect as it, like... So, like, when I normally read, I have to, like, flip a page back because of dyslexia and be like, wait, did I miss a section here? It's like, that's the only... With audiobooks, you'd normally fix that because I can just kind of listen and concentrate. I had to keep clicking back during action sequences to be like, wait, who is punching what now? I felt like an old man trying to, like, oh, Timmy, where do I click to listen to the thing?
Just hold on one sec. Who did what now?
Yeah, exactly.
And then Rockley dropped his ankle weights, and then...
Yeah. And like I said, it's weird because they have all these not awesome powers, but they have all these interesting powers with a lot of acrobatic flips and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, like, the most engaging and interesting, the most memorable scene, like, action scene, is the one where the Lord Ruler shows up. And it's just like, he walks slowly and someone stabs him with a spear, and he just, like, looks down like it's an annoying fly and keeps walking. And then the character comes up to him and he's like, aha! And the Lord Ruler just backhand slaps his face off.
Right, yeah.
It's just one of those things, like, all the action scenes in the world can't get me excited, but when one person does, like, 2 things that are really dynamic, then suddenly it's like, oh, holy shit!
Yeah.
This is cool! Or this is not cool, because the main character dies, but it's like, this is exciting!
One of the 2 of them.
Yeah, one of the main characters. Alright, so then moving on to the second point, this was something Brandon had a big hoopla about. Maybe hoopla is not the right thing.
No, hoopla's the right word.
Hoopla's the right term. It does feel kind of, like, dated in my process.
Yeah, we have that in quote, the declawing of Vin, the main character.
Are there quotes?
No.
Okay.
There's quotes in my head.
Okay.
We have a notepad here, but yeah, Vin, who started out as this, like, tough as nails street urchin, can't trust anyone, like...
I wouldn't say she was tough as nails, though, in a sense.
Yeah, she was kind of meek, but she was still like this survivalist.
Yeah, she's
She's
had
like
a hunger.
she's this alley cat who's just sort of like, I'll do what needs to be done to survive, but I have no friends.
Right.
And then, like, a fourth of the way through the book, she's infiltrating, like, high society as a spy, and she's like, man, these dresses are really nice. I really enjoy being a prim and proper lady.
Yeah.
And it's
And
like...
I, to a degree, would argue that if you had never been able to experience those kind of things, you would be a little charmed by the just alien nature of what those things are.
Yeah, it would be new and novel.
And any sort of comfort outside of an uncomfortable situation is pretty great.
You know what? It makes me wonder if things had been reversed, if she was a high society woman who had to become a spy and then infiltrate, like, low society, if she would be like, oh, this is awful, or if she'd be like, man, I enjoy not having to wear all these stuffy dresses and having to be prim and proper all the time.
I think depending on the way you would write it and the way he wrote it, he would do the latter.
Yeah. But, Brandon, you didn't really like this part.
Well, I didn't like it simply because, I don't know, it just took a character that I thought was going to go down an interesting road and then just really gave me this whole, like, ooh, so pretty. And her dialogue really changed, and I understand that is something that if you weren't... but
it's realistic, but it doesn't necessarily endear you to the character.
It doesn't endear me to the character, but it also, the speed, and, well, it is also over, like, several months, but just how he displayed it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It kind of made me feel like...
Yeah, I didn't quite have as negative a reaction as you did, but I still, I've mentioned this before, where I have this, this dislike of when they get characters who are like introverts, like they're loners, and they like being by themselves, which she clearly at the beginning, she's like, I like being alone, even if it's like, because when I'm alone I don't have to fear anyone's gonna like backstab me or whatever. But it's like, they like being alone, and then friends come along and they're like, oh, I wasn't an introvert, I just wanted friends the whole time. Like, that happens so much in media. I'm like, why can't you have someone who's just like, I'm just an introvert, even if I like, yeah, friends are nice and everything, but I still like to be alone.
And I think then, in a sense, like, the changing in that is more so her romance with what's-his-name.
Mm-hmm. Also her, like, opening up to the group, the thieving group, so she can actually have friends instead of distrusting literally everyone.
Yeah.
But
like,
it did kind of take this character that liked sitting alone in the dark and just
in my
seriously,
skin.
and then forcibly make her into a, like, hey, I want more friends.
Yeah, again, it didn't really paint her as like an actual introvert. It was more like she's reacting to the situation, which is why it didn't bother me that much. But it would have been nice to just sort of see her, like, continue to reject all that, like, yeah, I'm changing, but at heart, I'm still this person.
Right.
Or maybe, like, I've been this person my entire life, and therefore I won't change that easily.
Yeah.
But, again, it didn't bother me that much. I'm kind of, like, in between you, and Drew's, like, perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
You hated it. I'm like, I can see both your points. I still liked her. The thing that I really liked about it was that she had this moment that I've been having a lot recently, where... because I'm making more money doing YouTube stuff than I ever did doing fast food. And suddenly I'll, like, do something that I would, like, I'll spend money on something I never would have before. And I'm like, I'm getting so lazy and soft, I should never be enjoying this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And she has that moment, and it was really relatable to me, where, like, yeah, she got all about the dresses and the proms and high society, but she still has this moment of reflection, like, no, I need to be serious about this. I can't let it consume me and become, like, vapid.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's a scene where she barely even notices. I like it when he describes that, but then when she just starts talking about how the dresses are pretty is when I got really, really just...
I'm a guy, I don't like to hear about dresses.
A little bit, yeah. Hey, I'm not denying
Go ahead,
this.
Drew, I
I'm
see you
just,
smiling here.
It seems very silly. Like, it sounds like something my dad would say, where he's like, I don't know about all that pretty dress nonsense, but I like the character for this. And I'm like, it sounds like you're liking the character, but like, and I don't want to force progressive ideals on you.
Yeah.
But like, if you were to place yourself in Vin's situation fully, as a female who has been, alley, like you said, alley cat, who's like, doesn't trust anyone. Actually, even better, you are an alley cat. You're let inside. First, yeah, sure, at first you're gonna claw everything that tries to touch you. But, like, eventually when you find out that, oh, hey, it's super warm and dry in here, and I can eat whenever, and there's water here, cool. And if I just meow, they'll bring me shit.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna start to learn and, you know, kind of naturally declaw, in a sense, or at least reel them back.
Yeah. And like I said, it makes sense, but part of the reason why I still lean a little bit towards Brandon, even if you reverse the gender, if it was like a street urchin guy, and then he got all like looking at himself in the mirror, like combing his hair back and being like, oh yeah, I'm suave, like, I would still be kind of like, you're kind of becoming that guy, and I don't really like that guy. Like, anyone who's too interested in their appearance, male or female, is kind of like meh to me. But then again, that's me. It's different. Now, moving on to Drew's first point. We all have 3 points we want to make. I'm alternating between them. That's why we're kind of jumping around here. Hopefully you don't mind. Again, let us know in the comments what you think of it. But Drew wanted to take a moment to talk about classist undertones. Or classist overtones,
I was about
rather.
to say, it's more classist tones in this sense.
Yeah,
But,
and this was something you really liked about the book, right?
Yeah. I liked... I did and I didn't. I liked the stark nature, the way he wrote, like, high society. It was very, like, he was very like, oh, yes, high society. And then when he, but when he was writing, you know, the downtrodden, beaten, you know, what are they called again?
The ska.
The ska. Yeah, he's very good about making it sound, you know, oppressed and heavy, and, like, the words he uses very weighted.
Yeah.
And, like, so it's like, I really like the way he writes the classist tones. The problem is they're so stark.
Yeah.
That, like, it, like, throws you off when you get written in between them.
There's no, like, middle class whatsoever.
Yeah.
Or if there is, they're like, even the middle class are essentially slaves.
Yeah.
That was my, like, it doesn't feel like there was something to connect the two of them. And I know that it's supposed to be serfdom and
it's more historically supposed to be similar to, like, a serfdom and a kingdom, where it's like, there is either nobles or there are peasants. There are no merchant class yet.
Yeah. But that's the thing, like, I'm trying to think, like, was there any point in history where it was entirely that? Because even when you had serfdom, there were still merchants and stuff, weren't there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they were traveling usually. They weren't, like, set up in, like, a township.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
And that goes into the whole thing about, like, how the slavery in this system in general is, like, really weird.
Yeah.
Because it's this, like, American-style slavery. Like, the ska are treated as, like, a people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're born a ska, it's a genetic thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's nothing to differentiate them from the nobles, like, physically. They talk a lot about how, like, religiously the nobles... There's a part where the noble questions, like, do you think the ska have souls? Do you think they think the same thoughts that we do? And at the same time, like, the main character is a ska who infiltrates high society without any problem. So it's this weird thing of, like, how do you know someone is a ska? How could you keep up a system of, like, oppressed slavery based on a people when the people literally don't look or act any different than the nobles? It's hard to believe that a system like this could exist.
Yes.
It's almost a parody of itself.
Yeah, not necessarily a parody, but like an over-exaggeration.
Yeah.
Like he said, there's just no in-between. You are either a slave with no rights and they don't think you have a soul and your entire life is just meaningless toil, or you're the high society, like, rich person going around eating whatever you want. You could focus on fancy dresses and political intrigue.
Yeah.
And the Game of Thrones or whatever. Yeah, they don't really have a whole lot of that. Yeah.
Well, like, even in Game of Thrones, there's, like, you know, again, there's the merchant class, there's the working class, there's and then there are slaves, so, like...
But even, like, when you talk about the farmers in Game of Thrones, or even something like The Wheel of Time has a lot of, like, dirt poor farmers and stuff like that. But they still have, like, they're still free.
Yeah, they have rights.
They have some rights they can move. You can't kill them and, like... No one will give a damn.
Well, yeah, but it would
depends on who kills them.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a noble knight and you're like, peasant, you talk down to me, and you slice them, you slice them in half. Yeah, sure, the farmer village will be upset, but ultimately, like, anyone of importance will be like, hey, you cut down a farmer? Oh, it's a shame, that farmer. You have to pay that farmer, probably.
But that's the thing, like, if you can't, like, slaughter an entire village and not have it be under someone's notice.
Right.
Like, the nobles could literally, like, burn down a whole ska town, and I don't think anyone would care. One of the things they never really touched upon that's interesting is, like, do they care if the ska, like, kill each other? Because that's another, when you talk about, like, American slavery, it's like, slaves were property. they wouldn't want the slaves to kill each other because
Yeah.
slaves are expensive. But here you just get this idea like, the Ska outnumber the nobles like 300 to 1. They're just so expendable.
Yeah.
They're literally like, oh, well, you killed a Ska? Whatever. Just make sure you don't get any blood all over the place.
Just make sure you don't get blood on the tiles. I just had those cleaned.
Yeah, it's fine. Just do whatever.
So to go back to the original point is like, there are tones there, but they don't say anything about class in general. Is what my biggest problem is. Is like, they like, again, the way he writes, it's so clear that he wanted to have classist tones, but then he doesn't say anything about those societies that either hasn't already been said, or in a clear enough way that makes me like think, yeah, fuck high society.
Yeah. He kind of, he does a good job of making everything seem even, which is, it's good that like, the nobles aren't just like black and white bad guys.
Yeah.
Not all of them anyway. But at the same time, like, because of that, he meant, like you said, he mentions not to say anything.
Yeah.
It's like I said at the beginning when I was talking about it, it's an interesting world, he clearly put some thought into it, but you don't learn anything about classism.
No.
You don't, like, unless all you learn is slavery is bad, and if you didn't know that, I'm not sure, you probably need to read a lot more books.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably should have paid attention in history class.
Yeah.
Talk
Probably
to a
just
friend.
use your imagination for a second.
Yeah.
Be like, would I like being a slave? I don't think I would. Maybe I shouldn't enslave people.
Basically.
Any other thoughts on that? or should
No,
we
I
go
think
to
that's
the-
I think that's a clear wrap up.
We got it. Oh yeah, so yeah, I did actually manage to put these points in somewhat of a way that connects them.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about the society, one of your, I believe your positive points was that the society did feel realistically impressive, not impressive.
Oppressive, yeah.
Yeah.
It felt like if there was a actual, like, society of noble people that would just keep the propaganda of, hey, these people aren't people, they're animals, treat them as such.
Yeah.
It's just the logistics of it is never really...
Yeah, the fact that you have that noble who asks, like, do you think Ska have feelings? And it kind of hints that, like, there's a whole lot of propaganda going on, that there's this religious indoctrination that's going on to these people.
Like, even the nobles themselves are kind of brainwashed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really hear much about it. You don't
No.
learn any of the details about it. There's an interesting religion here, but you're not going to learn anything about it that would be exciting.
You're not going to learn or re-engage how you reevaluate how you would think of religion or your
Yeah.
religious, like, indoctrination.
It has an
basically.
interesting religious tone, but doesn't actually say anything
It
about
just talks
religion.
about, like, ooh, religion could be bad.
Which
Yeah.
I think that could go back to my initial review of the book.
Yeah.
Which is just like, it's a popcorn book. You're not gonna like, you're gonna enjoy it, but you're not gonna be like, wow, I learned so many things from
Yeah.
that goddamn book.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's a step above something like Transformers, where it's like, I always use Transformers as like the
Giant truck
prototypical, it's the prototypical action movie. People just watch it to see robots explode and fight each other and stuff like that.
Why not? Robots exploding is cool. But
Yeah.
if you try to like go and like, I'm going to philosophically analyze Transformers,
Well,
good luck.
the thing about it is that
How high
not
are you?
only,
Yeah.
how high are you? The thing about Transformers is that not only does it not say anything, it doesn't even like make a slightest attempt. Like,
No.
the main characters are just middle of the road generic protagonists. The plots are just the bad guys have a big thing that will destroy stuff. They make zero attempt to do any sort of interesting world building that could even start you on a train of thought.
right?
This is like one step above that in that it has this interesting stuff, they just don't elaborate it on enough to make you really think about anything.
Or in a way that makes you think about it.
Yeah, but going back to what you said about it, the one good thing that this does have is sort of the Gurren Lagann type effect, where the thing about Gurren Lagann is that show started off with characters who had never seen the sky, they were living underground, and then by the end they're flying in spaceships, and the progression is just like so amazing that when they do get to space, it's like, oh.
I've been biting on this forever.
So when they have that first scene that sets up like the Ska's literally being taken away to be murdered, and all the other Ska's are like, well, that's just life. Sometimes people get murdered. That's just how it be, though.
Sometimes
And then,
it do.
yeah, and then you go from that to like the big revolution in the end. It has this huge buildup because he made it feel so impressive that it could never be toppled.
Right.
So then when it does, it's like, hey, this is a cool thing. Although, sort of the ending just feels like as epic as it is, it almost feels rushed just because of how quickly you go from enslaved to free.
Yeah, it's like, it would be like a huge culture shock, but we'll go to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that in
we'll
a
get to
moment.
that in a second.
Did you have any other final points on that one?
No, it was, that's pretty much all I had on the propaganda and such.
Okay. So yeah, then we'll come back to the ending, but of course me and Brandon have to have our constant talk of the hard magic versus soft magic. Because if you don't know, Brandon Sanderson, the guy who wrote this, actually coined the terms hard and soft magic. He made a famous essay he released online several years back talking about how, like, what the differences between the two are and how you use them in writing. And Mistborn has, like, one of the hardest magic systems that I can think of.
Yeah, one of the most underwhelmingly hard magic systems
he dilutes it with so much information that it no longer feels like magic, it just feels like superpowers.
I wouldn't even say that far, because even superpowers can be compelling. Like, even X-Men, like, as diluted and weird as it is, it's still compelling because there are grades of each of them. They're like, their one telepath could be like, I can lift a cup. Whereas, like, Jean Grey's over there, like, I make everything float around me because, without even thinking about doing so.
Yeah. Well, the thing about X-Men is that their magic system has qualities of both. Individual X-Men have, like, hard magic, where, like, you know exactly what Cyclops can and cannot do.
Yes.
But X-Men as a whole is really soft because you can have...
Anything
can happen.
You can have Legion who can go back in time and kill Professor Xavier and still exist in just weird bonkers crap.
Just people joining stuff. So it is really interesting because, again, you go back to the first couple episodes, and my thing coming into this, when I hadn't read a whole lot of magic stuff, was that I really liked hard magic, that I thought the more rules you had, the more that I felt like I knew what I was doing, the more interesting and compelling it could be, because you can solve problems with hard magic systems when they have the rules.
Right.
And people bend the rules. It's, that's interesting. And instead I'm just finding that it's so boring.
It really kind of shoves your story into a corner. But it really depends on how you write either one, I find.
Because a good soft magic system makes you think, oh, interesting, or like, you don't question it at all almost. It's just like, oh, that is the reality of that situation at that moment. It just kind of happens, and you're like, oh, cool, wizard battle.
Yeah.
And then it moves on. But basically, like, they can also become like Deus Exes, where it's like, oh, he has this brilliant magical spell where he releases 10,000 dragons, and you're like, well, could he always do that? Why didn't he do that before? I'm very confused.
That's what Brandon Sanderson's essay basically says, like, soft magic and hard magic can both work, but if you have a soft magic system, don't use it to solve their problems. Mm-hmm. Or if you do, make it very clear that, like, they could solve their problems. Yeah. That's the thing about Lord of the Rings, like, most of the problems are solved by people actually doing things that you know they can do.
And I find if you can use for a good hard magic system, it's not something that you you box the story in. It's something that the characters can bounce off of easily. Something that actually emphasizes their just characterness as opposed to just being what defines them.
So, to kind of clarify what Brandon just said, because he looks confused.
I'm very confused.
Right, so, like, what he's saying is, like, a hard magic system, again, going to Avatar, earthbending doesn't define, the characters other than the characteristics in which they use their magic.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Toph is, like, the pinnacle of an earthbender, but that doesn't define who she is as a person.
Yeah, she has different personality traits other than that.
Yeah, so, like, but, like, some hard magic systems are like, I am Fire Guy incarnate. Like, this is all the personality I have to offer you.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to think of, like, what is a good example of, like, a hard magic system that really works. A lot of people do Avatar, because it's kind of based on Kung Fu.
Yeah.
Like, you have to know the skills, you have to be able to physically move around them and stuff.
My favorite example is Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah. Like, Full Metal Alchemist, it sets up the rules in literally every episode. And the characters, how they use this tool is what actually makes them seem different, as opposed to, again, like you said, I'm Fire Guy incarnate, I just always get angry, I'm these things.
Yeah.
I check off all the boxes, as opposed to being like, hey, I'm this guy, but I can also throw fire because of this ability.
Yeah.
Because I use this rule of the hard magic system.
And sometimes if you, like, combine it with their personality in the sense that, like, hey, most fire guys do this, but because I'm this kind of way, I do fire this way. Then it makes it feel like there's more, like a branching tree of, like, ooh, maybe this character could do this if they could have this, or if that, you know what I mean?
There's a lot of this and that, so I'm gonna say, fill in again with examples.
Oh.
Avatar Azula versus Zuko is a good example of what Brandon's trying to say. Zuko's very passionate and aggressive, so his fire reflects that, being bright orange and, like, widespread and, like, very fluent, just like him as a character. Whereas his sister Azula, this cold, calculated bitch, breathes these hot, extremely hot blue fire. But it's like
It's very straightforward.
Very straightforward, very poignant, very
to
like
the point.
Yeah.
I believe she does lightning, right?
Yeah, exactly. She's very cold, calculated, and again, this reflects her as a character, but it doesn't define her by her magic. So like, but it makes you think, oh, well, if this personality can do this, or this personality can do this, like, what affects, what else affects bending by personality?
Gotcha.
I think that's pretty much all on the magic system.
Yeah, well, we kind of got a little off
track on defining hard and soft magic.
Yeah,
Which is, again, we're going to have this debate 1,000 times from now.
Yeah, going back, because again, that's the thing, is like, of all the stories we've read so far, I really like the soft magics a lot more. Obviously, you can do it good with hard magic.
Mm-hmm.
So the question here is like, why does this hard magic not feel that compelling?
And I think, personally, it's the fact that his hard magic is lackluster.
Yeah. I think the thing we had mentioned before, or we'd been talking about before, was how, despite the fact their magic is called allomancy, and the whole idea is they ingest metals, and different metals give them different powers. There's 10 metals specifically, they have to be pure. Okay, there's 11, but the 11th metal is like a MacGuffin.
Yeah.
But either way, they have 10 metals, each one has a different property, which seems kind of cool, but the thing about it is that none of the powers are like themed after the metals. Like, tin gives you the ability to see and hear really well.
But like tin, from what we know, doesn't have like super reverberative properties.
Yeah, unless you're thinking of like tin being like, oh, I could talk into a tin can with a string and talk far away.
Well, that's like 11th grader logic.
Yeah, or like burning pewter makes you super strong. But if you think of pewter like,
it's a soft, easily malleable metal.
Yeah, it's not really like the super strength endurance one. I think it's iron is the one that gives you, I forget if it's push or pull.
One of the two. It's iron and steel that both do the push and pull.
Yeah, where you can like pull metal towards you or push it away. The Mistborns can do all of them. But it's just one of those things like, why does iron, I guess is iron magnetic?
It's one of the most magnetic, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I guess that kind of, except for it also pulls.
But like the fact, but if one is fits the theme, it only starks it more because then the rest of them aren't themed.
Or like gold allows you to see into your past.
Yeah.
Like what the fuck kind of power is that?
I think that's another kind of problem with the system is that, like, again, like a hard magic system in his essay, and the dude who wrote its fucking essay says, hard magic system is only as useful as the problem solving abilities that power grants you. Again, Avatar is the big example for a lot of people because, like, earthbending, you can do all sorts of problem solving. So people usually want earthbending. Firebending, you have to get a little more creative with how you use fire.
All firebending can do is destroy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to get really creative with how you'd use it. There's like uses for it, but you have to really think outside the box. That's what makes it really engaging and interesting.
Or stuff that like makes the world building really interesting is like, oh, we've got all these earthbenders and we're putting them on a metal platform in the ocean.
Yeah.
Like the idea that they had a prison there and it's like, how do you solve the problems? Or when I remember they put Katara somewhere with no water.
Yeah.
And then she uses like her sweat.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, that's a really cool way to solve the problem.
Exactly. So like, the problem is that these gave you abilities that almost don't solve problems unless you're in a group with people that have the other abilities.
Like, if you just have the ability to like push metal, that doesn't like give you a whole lot of
transportation.
You could do some transportation, but I imagine horses would be better than like giving some guy iron and have him walk behind a carriage and like push stuff. Like, it's very magnet kind of like you're just pushing stuff away. You have, well, they call them coin shots, where like they get a bunch of coins and they throw it at someone as a weapon. But you can't use that to like build a structure.
Yeah, like they don't have magnekinesis, which basically makes Magneto so powerful is that he has full control over metal.
Yeah, their whole thing is just you push it away or you bring it towards you.
Yeah, which again, weapon useful in the moment, but doesn't solve a lot of
Like,
problems.
but yeah, it was just really weird. It didn't really fit all together all that well. I would rate their magic system 5 out of 10.
We're giving rate. I didn't know we were giving ratings.
I usually don't.
Yeah.
When it comes to, like, entire books and stuff like that, I'm not gonna put it on a number. But when it comes to, like, how cool is this magic system, it's a 5.
I'd agree.
You could do neat stuff with it. It's not compelling. It's not bad. It's not good either.
I give it a 4 simply because it felt like like you said, it had been polished away from all of its shine. That it just it fell with a thud.
Yeah.
It didn't really.
Like I said, it's just not connected to. It could have been literally anything. They could have gotten these powers from eating different foods. Like different fruits could have given them this power.
Much like a certain book being written right now.
Don't name drop.
Sorry.
They don't get powers from foods in Lefty. Yeah, moving away from magic. Sorry, that took up like a whole fucking hour or something. I can curse in this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I'm asking.
your show.
I've already used the term shard. I think we're good.
Okay. But yes, Kelsier's plan, the main character. This is one of Drew's points.
Yeah.
We wrote down it's brilliant and dumb at the same time.
So like, it's brilliant because of the way he does it and the way he works it out. Like he's been slowly whispering into the other, thieves of influence and getting them to join his idea. And then, it all comes to a head. But it all comes to a head. He's like, now, do the plan now. And everyone's like, oh, okay, shit. We're revolutioning.
For those who don't know or haven't really read the book, what's the plan?
Oh, so the plan is to slowly embed seeds and ideas of revolution, and that what's the word?
The ska.
The ska can be more and free people, and that we shall rise against them and take out the religious one. I can't remember his name. I'm so bad at this.
The High Lord.
The High Lord, yeah. And we're gonna take out, the bureaucrats and the High Lord, and we're gonna be free people. And then he's been slowly but surely putting it. It's like, so it's brilliant in the fact that he's like patient about it.
But it relies on so much.
It just, in that chapter where he's just like, all of a sudden he's just like, hey, guys, go, go, go. And everyone seems to be just kind of be okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, it's dumb in the sense that it works. But, like, it only works because, like, the author said it works.
Yeah, the plan itself feels like it includes a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of wraps into the ending. We can just kind of do it because the whole thing about the ending, what would have made this, I feel like, a much more compelling book is they talk about, like, at first it starts out at this heist, but part of the heist is, like, raising an army to distract they're basically going to rob the High Lord, like the god of this realm, and the Kelsier is going to try to kill him as well.
Right.
They make a point of how, like, they could do this, but it wouldn't necessarily result in the ska taking over, or the ska breaking free, even if it was possible to, like, imprison the High Lord or to kill the High Lord or whatever. And they make a big deal also about, like, you could try to do this, but the ska have been enslaved for 1,000 years. Like, it's not going to be toppled in a day. And I think it would have been really compelling if, like, they end with, like, a sliver of hope. Like, here's the seed of what could be in the future. He started things on its way. And then in the last chapter, it's literally just like, no, the revolution is happening now.
Yeah.
Right this second. Let's go, storm the castle, kill the High Lord, and it works.
Yeah.
Invade Wall Street.
Yeah, it what?
Yeah.
The High Lord is not Wall Street, Brandon. I'm not sure what kind of classist overtones you're getting from this. He was a religious leader, not an economic one.
Wow.
But either way, the point is, there's a really nice message that I think a lot of people need to learn about how, like, especially in, like, today's cancel culture, where something happens and people are immediately like, this needs to end now. This needs to be stopped now. Let's go take action and change it right this second. And a lot of times change is slow and it takes compromise and it takes a lot of years of hard work. And it would have been nice to have a story that kind of sends that message. Like, yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't change society in an evening. A handful of people cannot change society by being thieves, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, it's like, oh no, you can. You just gotta die in the process, but it's fine.
You gotta get real exciting about it, though.
You basically gotta martyr yourself.
Yeah. But, like, that's my also problem is, like, his
plan to basically make a martyr of himself.
plan to martyr himself when it clearly, like, his plan also, that's why I'm saying it's brilliant but dumb, because I'm like, I'm gonna martyr myself, but I'm also gonna, like, make it real important that all these other people are part of the plan just to see me die, basically.
I think it was CPG Grey who said, if you're making plans for stuff that happens after you're dead, you're either a supervillain or a mad genius. Kelsier was smart and everything, but I don't feel like he was either of those.
No.
Well, I mean,
Well,
mad.
depends on how you view him killing the other Ska,
Yeah.
which is a later point.
Yeah. Did we even have that on? Oh yeah, that's a later point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brandon. What did you think about the ending? Kind of the same.
I echo back everything you say. It's pretty much. It felt like the revolution was kind of like a light switch, where they're just like, "Hey, revolution sounds like a good idea. It's on."
Yeah. It's like, what was it? The day before, he's like visiting the Ska, and he never told anyone else that he was like going to the poorhouses and like coming in at night in the mist when all the Ska think the mist will kill you, and he's like, no, I walk in the mist and I give them food. And they're like, oh, we didn't know you were doing that in addition to running a huge ring and raising an army and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, I've been doing this for years. And then the next day he like dies in this big public way where like everyone can see it. And then in a very clever, an admittedly clever twist, they reveal that there's these weird creatures they had mentioned before who could basically take someone's bones and take on their appearance.
Yeah.
These, like, weird mist monsters.
Only caveat is you have to be dead.
Yeah. Well, obviously, if they're gonna absorb your bones.
Yeah, I mean, there's some magic things in there.
But yeah, so there's like, oh, he knew one of these, he's been impersonating a lord, a noble, for, like, this entire time.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, when he dies, he takes over him, and then he's like, oh, we saw him die, and yet, in the shadowy mists, he still walks among you.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say anything, he just sort of, like, appears to people, and they're like, he is the mist itself. He wanted us to revolt. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's kill each other. Let's rip each other's heads off. It's like, don't they need training or anything? Nah.
No, they're gonna
Nah,
be
they're
good.
good. Wasn't there some people who, like, didn't believe or didn't trust? Nah, everyone liked him.
Yeah.
Aren't
It's
these
like-
people a bit malnourished and not, like, taken care of well enough? Are they going to have problems?
Nah, he
No.
brought him enough food. They're
Yeah.
good.
It's all good.
It's like, well, I'm glad everything worked out in the end.
Billions
That's like the argument for, like, everything turned back to normal in sitcom structure. Whereas, like, at the end of every episode, they're sitting around the couch. It's like, thank God everything's back to normal. Even though, again, an episode could have been about them, you know, like, being in courts where, like, they're about a case that's, like, has long-lasting progressions. And it's just like, well, good thing everything's back to normal now. I'm like, no.
We took over a
No.
third world country, but at
Yeah.
least everything's back to normal.
Yeah.
Or like, what was it? This actually ties it. Before we were doing this, we were talking about, like, ridiculous books for us to read on this. And one of them was the Turner Diaries.
Yeah.
Which is, like, a nefarious book about, like, a right-wing gun nut who basically takes over the government by killing everyone. And it's like, this is essentially the same, like, kind of message. It's got
Yeah.
this whole, like, oh yeah, if you just kill everyone, it'll work out.
No one can see
As
you if
long
they're
as your
dead.
cause is good.
Yeah, as long as your cause is good, yeah, the Ska can lead.
Yeah, that's the thousands of years of oppression and, you know, subservienceness and basically having your human rights taken away wouldn't at all affect their psyche or ability to lead.
Yeah. Doesn't quite work that way.
No, it's like, so revolution, that's my big problem with, like, a lot of today's, like, teen or young adult, like, fiction, especially the dystopian ones where it's like, rise up, defeat your oppressors. I like the idea of telling them, be free, don't fully trust anything, be, you know, aggressive only when necessary. But a lot of people don't absorb the last parts of what I say.
It sort of sounded like you were talking about Hunger Games there for a second.
It basically
The
is,
young adult,
yeah.
like, Maze Runner
Maze
and
Runner.
how many other...
There's thousands of them
Yeah,
at this point.
it's young adult soup.
The thing is, there's all these books about, like, toppling the government. There's no books about building a coalition afterwards
Yeah.
and, like, the difficult part of working out. It's like, yeah, they're gone and now everything will work together. And it's like, you look at Russia in World War I, where, like, they toppled the Tsar
Yeah.
and the communists had control.
And they
except
had
for
no
there's,
idea what to do.
There's 4 factions of communists with different ideas, and then you have, like, the white Russians and the red Russians fighting against each other.
Yeah.
Sorry, white Russians.
That's the facts, that's what they were called.
Yeah.
I know, I just
They
like
were
that.
different. You have, like, the Bolsheviks and the Soviets and the
Yeah.
anti-Bolsheviks, and it's like, Maybe that's what the sequel is about. I don't know. But anyway, the Ash. Okay, moving back to... Well, you know what, actually, Sorry, Brandon.
Oh, no.
While we're talking about the morality and all this stuff, let's just go ahead and do Drew's thing, because Drew has an interesting point about Kelsier's sort of
like
morality.
Kelsier's morality because it's very chaotic neutral, which again, normally as a person, I'm very about. Like, I'm very about the Jack Sparrow, like, everyone has freedoms until mine are jeopardized.
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with, because I kind of identify with that. But the fact that Kelsier was like, alright, all Skas need to work together, except for those fuckers who chose to guard, He makes sounding like choosing a guard position that gets you better food and getting better whatever, as like a choice to stand with the nobles, when he's like, hey, guards, we're gonna kill all those guys. You're probably gonna have to die if you fight for them.
Yeah, I guess we should clarify just what we're talking about is the fact that, like, Kelsier sneaks into the nobles' mansions, just pretty much to steal and kill nobles and stuff. The whole Robin Hood thing, to be expected. But because there's only, like, 200 nobles and, like, 1 million Ska, most of the guards are Ska.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes a big deal, especially at the start of the novel, just sort of like, oh yeah, they've betrayed their people and they deserve to die just as much as any noble.
Yeah.
Which is really weird because then by the end he's like, unite Ska, we are one people, I am the martyr for you.
You killed my cousin!
You killed my cousin. That doesn't matter, he chose the wrong side.
He was giving me food for my sick sister! Like, but I'm bringing you food now.
Yeah, but I'm bringing you food now, so it's cool.
You could have done that without killing my cousin!
Yeah, like, there's a whole thing about Kelsier's morality where it's self-serving, but not interestingly enough to be like Jack Sparrow. But not like, beginning, he's also
redeemable.
not redeemable enough to be like, he's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I can forgive good old Kelsier.
I think the problem is it feels like it's just in service of the story, like, well, I gotta have cool action scenes where people die. This is a young adult novel.
Yeah.
We can't have why would a noble be a guard?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense, so I'll just say one thing and do another. As long as it lets me have cool action scenes and be a martyr, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like, again, that's not how the morality of that situation would work. Like, Kelsier, as a character, as you've established him, would have some problems with killing his fellow Ska if he was true to what he was saying.
Or at the end, there'd be a bunch of Ska who wouldn't follow him because they're
and
like...
it'd be like almost a civil war of Ska to decide who should
did
follow
or didn't
Kelsier.
trust.
Yeah.
What did you think, Mr. Brandon?
I just think it feeds back into the whole, like, having two classes is very, very difficult to balance in a story. Just being like, hey, there's only Ska and there's only noble. What about the people who do all the stuff that neither one of them really should do? Ska'll do it.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you want to give Ska swords and put them around the nobles? I'm sure that won't work out.
Yeah.
Like, the Romans didn't use slaves as, like, guards, did they? I don't think so.
Well, no, only free men even new slaves, like, newly freed slaves, who would just have attained citizenship, Jesus Christ, alright, would, like, have basically not a waiting period, but, like, basically they wouldn't be allowed to, like, purchase weapons or get super important
They wouldn't
jobs.
be allowed to walk around with a sword or something
until,
like that.
they had proven themselves loyal to the Empire.
Yeah. I guess you could, again though, that's another thing, is like, you can't really compare slavery in ancient Rome to the Ska slavery because
it's so based on the brutal American slavery.
Yeah, because in Rome you often weren't born a slave, and even if you were, there was always a chance you could be freed. And free slaves could, like, go on to do stuff.
Yeah.
There were, like, senators who used to be slaves. Like, it was rare, but it happened.
Like, not Caesar, but, like, there was a super important, like, Roman general who won a battle in the Gaul, who was originally a Gaul slave.
Yeah.
And that was the only reason they won that battle.
Because he knew all their tactics and stuff like that. But yeah, either way, Kelsier's a hypocrite, at least a little bit. I think we can all kind of agree on that.
I agree.
Oh yeah, he even states it himself, I'm sure, a couple times in the book.
I don't know. He was kind of weird. There were times when, like, I thought he was leaning towards becoming, like, a dictator or something.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was leaning towards evil, and then he came back, and then he...
Yeah, but it's like, it wasn't done interestingly, though. Like, Jack Sparrow is always my go-to for that kind of character, where it's like, you don't know whose side he's on, but you really want to follow where he's going, because you never know what's going to happen next with him.
You can always tell that he's on his side.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to remember if they had chapters that were from his perspective, right?
Most of them, yeah.
Not most of them. It
like,
switched between him and Vin.
Yeah.
It was 50-50.
I thought there were ones that, like, followed him, but I don't know. I remember getting a lot of, like, thoughts of Vin, but I don't remember a lot of, like, Kelsier's thoughts.
Kelsier's thoughts were kind of bland and meandering about, like, again, the character he is.
When you think about his character, the weird thing about him is that, again, he's inconsistent, and it's not quite that same inconsistency that, like, a real person has.
Yeah.
He doesn't feel like a complex character who's struggling with these things.
Exactly.
Because even when he's alone, he's like, I am confident about what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So when he does different things, it doesn't seem like he's struggling. It seems like he's just poorly written.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or he's just inconsistently written.
He's a plot device that they gave a face.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, like, if the guard scene, if he had been struggling, like, oh man, I shouldn't be doing this, but this is for the good of all, all ska.
Or
then,
maybe later on, before he, like, started visiting them at night, he was like, oh man, I regret killing Ska.
Yeah.
Or
like,
something. But he
or
never
even the
does
Uncle
that.
Iroh thing. Like, again, like, my favorite scene from Avatar is the scene where Uncle Iroh goes to the one prisoner who was nice, or the one prison guard who's nice to him, and goes, you should go home tomorrow, or like, you should stay in sick tomorrow, because I'm gonna basically fuck this place up, and I don't want to hurt you. Like, if he had done that with the guards, where he'd used his natural charm and ability to speak, and his stealth to basically say, hey, this knife can either cut your throat, or you can walk away. You choose.
Yeah.
Like, if he had basically given them a choice, it would show that his morality he had a regret about doing these actions.
I wonder if that was almost like a purposeful thing to make Vin seem better by comparison. Because Vin has a lot more interesting, like, back and forth, and she struggles with, like, who she's becoming and what she's doing, and whether they're doing the right thing. And Kelsier just always seems like, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. And it's like, yeah, part of that is he's the leader, he's putting on that face, but he does that even when he's alone.
Yeah.
Like, even in his thoughts, he's like,
man, I'm great. Kelsier's great.
Kelsier's great.
Kelsier is
like,
great.
he's running off alone to fight the things, and he's like, gotta kill the guards, they're evil too. And it's like, are you explaining this to the audience?
Or yourself.
I assume he's just talking to himself, like, yep, no need to feel bad about this murder.
Yeah.
Here I go killing again, no fear.
Here I go killing again. It's my favorite line.
Alright, so then, final point here, Brandon talking about the world building.
What the fuck are the ash mounds?
What are ash mounds?
Sorry, I've been building that this entire time. He explains so much about, like, the culture to a point, and he just vaguely describes this ashy...
There's a lot of proper nouns and not a lot of explanation.
Yeah,
There's not like a codex to explain them.
Yeah, they're like, oh, what about the deepness? What about, like, the ash mounts? What about the terracemen and their land and their war against... Like, yeah,
and like
that would be neat.
Any other book would have a map at the front that would say these things, and like you said, a codex. And this book was just like, here, have this. What is it? Here, have this.
Just know it happened sometime in the past. It involves things.
And it feels like he's just using this to make it seem like an interesting world, which is very cheap and shallow to me. Where he's just like, hey, this world doesn't feel fantasy enough.
What if it rains?
Yeah.
What if it rains ash?
Yeah.
That's cool. What if it's every night strange mists appear?
Yeah.
And the people who go out in them are the Mistborn. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ah.
I imagine that's the same
Stephen
tone
King.
and words you use as a pitch to his, like, author. Yeah.
The editor.
The editor.
What's
like,
your next book, Brandon?
Yeah.
It's misty, and they're Mistborn, and they eat iron and shoot magnetism.
Ooh.
And there's ash. He's just like looking outside. There's like a fire going, and there's ash everywhere.
Why is there ash? Okay, that's neat. Why does it come out of like mountains? Is it a natural phenomenon? Is this like post-apocalyptic?
Exactly.
Read the sequels.
Read the sequels.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is like a bait, and he has like a you gotta read to find out, or if it really is just like...
Well, I think if it was, though, wouldn't you think it would be, like, brought up more consistently?
Yeah.
Because it feels like the ash mounds are brought up maybe once or twice, and then never mentioned again.
They mention that's where the ash comes from. I guess the real big question is, like, obviously they talk about, like, before the event, whatever it was, that the Lord Ruler became a god.
Yeah.
And he did something with the deepness. I don't know if he defeated it, or trapped it, or whatever. He did something with the deepness. Before then, there wasn't ash. Right. So, I guess the ash mounds have something to do with that?
But, like, also, like, we didn't talk at all about the fact that they play up this whole, like, Mad Max style, like, you need me to protect you from what's really going on
Oh,
when
yeah,
they kill
at the
the
very
Lord.
end.
Yeah. And I'm just like, what do you mean? What? You're not, like, what?
The last, when they kill the High Lord, or when they're about to kill him, he's like, "You fools, I have protected you for 1,000 years. Without me,
Yeah.
it will..."
Yeah. And we're like, what? The deepness? The ash mounds? We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't have any idea.
I don't know if the ash mounds are like a natural thing that occurred, like
Yeah.
around the same time, or...
But like, at least even in like the Mad Max style, he at least gets a keyword out there that we're like, even if we don't know what it is, like we can still, it's a mystery that we can, think upon and, imagine. It's just, he just doesn't even tell us. It's just it. And we're like, what is it?
It?
Yeah.
What is it?
Good, nice Faith No More reference. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, one more thing. Going back to the disappointing ending, because you've reminded me, I really hate what they did with the High Ruler.
Yeah.
Because there's,
There
at the
we go.
beginning of every chapter, there's a part of the High Ruler's diary, like a snippet of it. And all the time you get it, like, and they find the diary in the book, and they start reading through it. So they're reading the same chapters that, like, we are. And he's like, oh, he's this super nice guy, he's this reluctant hero who doesn't want to be the chosen one, but he has to, and they're like, oh, I had to kill this guy today, and I feel, like, awful about it. I wish we didn't have to do this. I wish we could work together. Hopefully once this is sorted out. And, like, now he's responsible for enslaving everyone and, like, killing people and all this horrible stuff. And it's like, what happened to make him change?
Yeah.
Like, what is it about the ash mounts or whatever? And then the twist is, some other guy killed the chosen one and took his place and no one noticed.
Yep.
I'm okay with that twist up until the point where no one noticed.
Yeah.
I'm just like, specifically, there's another power system in that show, in the actual book that's called ferrochemistry, where they actually they don't ingest, they just wear.
Yeah,
metal.
they have a thing where they can, like, store their strength in bars of metal. Like, they spend time being weak, and then later on they can be like 4 times as strong, but it uses up the metal.
And the High Ruler is a fusion of allomancy and ferrochemistry, and it's not explained fully
Why he can do both.
why he's able to live for 1,000 years because of it.
Well, they do it. That's the one thing they do explain, actually. Because they're like, the whole thing is a ferrochemist can only store, like, their own strength.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't have someone store strength, give you their bar, and then you use their strength.
Yeah.
Because they can't use other people's stuff. Same thing, like, they have a ferrochemist give an allomancer, like, a little bit of, like, iron that they stored strength in. They're like, can you burn it? Like, I can, but it's just, like, normal iron.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Like, I can sense something's there, but I can't use it. But they're like, if you have both, they theorize that he could get other people's strength, or other people's age, and then
I hadn't
use
heard that it was that. I just thought that it was established that ferrochemists couldn't do that. So why would a ferrochemist have the ability? Alchemist.
Why would both give you the ability to
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah.
They don't. They don't know.
Again,
That's the
it's
thing.
same
The whole
thing.
the last like 3 pages are just them like, huh? What do you think he meant about that being a dark thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. Huh? Why do you think he lived for 1,000 years? He's like, I guess there's some sort of synergy between the 2 powers that
Yeah.
allows him to use other people's strength.
Think we should have asked him?
I don't know. We were just trying to kill him super quick.
Okay. I mean, we only have like 5 pages left. We should have really done that.
Yeah, I guess that it'll all be revealed in the sequel.
Yeah. But,
Which,
like,
comment in the comments if you want us to read the sequel, if you're super interested, or if you know about this book and you're like, guys, the sequel, 10 times better. You'll
Yeah.
learn everything and you'll appreciate all the stuff. And, you know, if you have read this, let us know your thoughts. Even if you haven't, let us know, based on what we said, what you thought about all the same topics that we discussed. It's always cool to read stuff down in the comments.
Oh yeah. Even if you think we don't know what we're talking about, if you think we were like totally off on Mistborn, give us your reasons why. Maybe we'll reevaluate.
Yeah, we're all about the discussion.
Mhm.
And, you know, just because we don't like something doesn't mean, like, you can't like it. Doesn't mean it's, like, terrible. It's just our opinion.
Yeah.
You guys
Which
know
I
what you're
feel like-
talking about?
I feel like saying something is just our opinion is something that you don't have to say. But there's so many people that get bent. They're like,
They're
no,
really bent out of shape.
you are
lately, yeah.
objectively saying this is bad if you don't like it.
But that's a thing that I feel like we should disclaim sometimes.
Yeah.
Just because the way the internet works sometimes.
At the end of a hour-long podcast. I hope you listened this long if you were hating it the whole time.
Disclaimer at the very end.
Yeah.
Listen, I've listened to some things I didn't like for more than an hour.
Comment in the comments if you hate us. And with that, I think that pretty much wraps up everything we have to say. I hope you enjoyed listening. I hope you enjoyed this little podcast here. Next month, we're looking at The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and The Restaurant at the End of the Universe by Douglas Adams. Those are the first 2 books in the Hitchhiker's Guide series. Yes, this is recorded in post because we said the wrong books. We ended up deciding on these after the fact, so that's what we're doing. Check them out if you want to participate in the book club. They're both really good, very funny, and the 2 of them together are shorter than Mistborn, so should be a fairly light read. Any other final words, guys?
Just really don't be afraid to comment in the comments and have some fun with discussions.
Yeah, great way to stay in shape. Brandon?
Okay. I was going to just say, again, thank you for translation, Drew.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I ramble and I speak in strange terms.
You use a lot of impersonal pronouns. You're like, it's like that thing, and where they do the guy, and they've got all these things, and
It's
I'm
because
like,
my brain connects the dots, but nobody else does for me, except for Drew.
quite all
Drew
right.
gets me, man.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed
It's
it
because
regardless.
I've been there, so.
All the feedback in the world.
Yes.
So until next time, keep reading and get a leg up on that journey.
Oh, God,
Something.
please don't let that be it. No. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, Drew.
Thank
gonna
you.
be okay.
Thank you. I was scared there for a second. That was a scary moment.
Legs, see you all next time.
That's even worse. Just cut it.
Step on it.
Bacon and legs. And toast.
Oh,
If you have a better sign-off, let me know.
let's just go out of this, alright, man?
Legs just go. Legs just shut the fuck up.